Hello and welcome back to In Progress. I am your host, Raymond Perez, and it is, sorry to lie to you, but I am going to. Actually, I'm not particularly sorry. Uh, it is January 20th, 2023, and it's the 2-year anniversary of Joe Biden's inauguration. So because of that, I am going to give him a progress report like the one that we did last year around the same time. Let's get right into it. So this progress report was made on Canva. Sorry for all you Canva haters. I am actually one of them. I'm raising my hand, although you can't see it. Here, I'm raising my hand. Don't like Canva, but I did it because it was the best option available. So last year I gave him a B. I just was very not disappointed, but just like extremely mediocred. Meh, I guess. I don't really know what the word is here, but extremely unsurprised by the Biden administration. This year, I've been a lot more surprised by Biden, but that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. And we'll talk about that as we get further into this report card and I go into the final grade. So, first, presidential leadership. Now, I gave him a C minus last time because I didn't think he was a very imposing presence on the news. He barely made a splash after getting inaugurated. It was weird. It was actually extremely strange because Obama and Trump, they were always dominating the news cycle. Biden, much less so. In fact, who was dominating the news cycle? It was first, actually, in some sense, it was still Trump. People were still talking about Trump. And that was true now, but it's true in a different way now. But it was Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. The two conservative senators uh, in the Democratic caucus, right? And although Manchin did have his time in the sun, you know, uh, during this administration and during this year, it was still kind of less obvious than it was in the first year. So Joe Biden was probably able to kind of wrangle together Manchin and Sinema and the rest in order to actually get some things passed, which he did. This was a very productive legislative year. Inflation Reduction Act is one major one. The Chips Act is another major one. The PACT Act, of course. So. I am going to give him, wow, very strange. I'm not normally this discombobulated, but I'm going to give him a B on it because he is good, but he's still not like, whoa, not two Bs. Shouldn't give him one B. Did something just change? Oh, yeah, something did. B. Okay, delete. Delete. Okay, B. Okay, he's getting a B on this. The rest of these are not necessarily correct. So I'm just going to go through these just very briefly. I'm not even going to pause it, frankly. Just going to continue talking. Um, so the next is the pandemic, which honestly, the pandemic is basically over in the sense that no one cares about it anymore. No one talks about it. Obviously, if you're affected by the pandemic, it still affects you. But the pandemic as a political idea, the pandemic as something that dominates the news cycle, is just not something that is true anymore. So for that reason, I don't know whether to even grade the pandemic, but the pandemic was still around, right, as a political idea before during this year. I think it kind of disintegrated around Omicron, and I don't really remember when Omicron ended, so I'm just going to say that he gets the same grade he got last time. I don't remember there being any major difference between this year of the pandemic and last year, other than the fact that last year was just much more important. So I'm giving it a B. At some point, I might just change this to be something that isn't a pandemic, something less obvious. But the pandemic is kind of gone as a political idea now. And by the way, pandemics are political in the sense that public health is a political policy, and the decision to name something a pandemic inherently involves public health. So that's political policy, let's say. Um, the economy, I'm going to actually go back to what I said last year, which is that the economy was okay under Biden, but the real truth is that you have to compare the economy to the rest of the world's economy. And here, Joe Biden gets an A. yes, I know this is not a great year for the economy generally, in the sense that inflation is very high. Uh, but the truth is that inflation is high in the U.S., but lower in the U.S. compared to other developed countries, like the EU, which is not a country, it's of course the supranational union, but it holds there. Uh, the United States is currently experiencing a very strong dollar, which is actually not as good as it sounds, but it is still important to note that people are flocking to the U.S. People believe the U.S. has a strong currency. It has a strong economy, so people are moving their wealth into dollars. Okay, so he gets an A on the economy. We can talk more about that, but I actually will have a video coming out about how right I was that Biden's economy was good. Okay, immigration. Not hugely involved in immigration, I say, despite actually working with the Immigrant Legal Assistance Project here in Maryland. But the the honest truth is, I don't really know what grade I would give him. I really debated this in my head, like what would I give him before actually making this video. Uh, I'm just going to continue last year because Biden has basically made the immigration process easier in the sense that he's not enforcing a lot of the uh, closed border policies. I don't really know how else to put it. But a lot of these policies, he's not enforcing them as uh, as badly as a Donald Trump would. But to be clear, Biden is deporting people. He is still doing a lot of the ills associated with the American immigration system. So should I give him an A minus? Yes, because I don't think another president will be doing it much better. So an A minus he gets. Honestly, yeah, that's what I'm going to give him. Also, by the way, this idea of a border crisis that's occurring right now, I don't really blame that on Biden. I don't even think it's really happening, but people are very upset about it. And the GOP, you know how Democrats are; they just like play to the GOP's the GOP's talking points. So okay, sure. Uh, let's censor that. Okay, foreign policy, A plus. This was probably the best year for American foreign policy that we've had since. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a year that we've had as good as this one, and a lot of it was the fact that Joe Biden, who by the way was chair of Senate Foreign Relations, I think, when he was senator. I mean, really, you just can't beat experience, and you can't beat this Biden's leadership style in the sense that Biden, defers a lot to people who know better than him. And Biden himself knows very well foreign policy. So, big fan of Biden's foreign policy, of course, in relation to Ukraine, in relation to combating China and its rising, its rising elements. So, foreign policy A plus. Social policy, also, I'm going to give him an A. The reason I'm not giving him an A plus is pretty simple. He hasn't really done that much for Black people this year. Okay, I mean, that's just how it shakes up when Black people just tend to be, a majority of his coalition. That's ironic, by the way. It's sarcastic. I don't really know why he hasn't done much for Black people, other than the fact that many of the legislative things that he could have done were they require 60 votes in Congress rather than the 50 votes or an executive order. So he really already did a lot with executive order the year before last, but it just frankly isn't enough. So he's getting just a simple A. But I should note that he passed two very important bills: the Respect for Marriage Act, which just passed in December, which doesn't legalize gay marriage because gay marriage has already been legal. And it doesn't even codify gay marriage. But what it does is that it codifies respect for gay marriage. Ironically, that's exactly what the bill says. That gay marriage is performed in any state have to be recognized in all states. That's what the Respect for Marriage Act does. It does do a few other things, but that's the primary thing it does. It does not mean that all states need to have gay marriage legal inside those states. So that's an important point. I never really understood why that was relevant because I feel like the full faith and credit clause in the Constitution already covers that, but someone else who knows more than me in marriage law can probably tell me why I'm completely silly and completely stupid. But frankly, the honest truth is, I feel like I'm right. And the other one was the gun bill, which I forget the name of for some reason, that he passed. I actually forget what it does as well, specifically. I feel like it might be a red flag law, but I don't really remember. And honestly, I'm not the one to talk about gun control because, as I mentioned in a recent video, I don't really care about it. Okay. Uh, Finally, climate change. He's getting an A on that as well. Um, he currently passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which I think is perhaps the best bill that has been passed in the United States since 2010. So it's a huge accomplishment. And what it does is that it provides a lot of various infrastructure improvements. But another major thing it does is point to first, it draws back fossil fuel subsidies, but it also provides subsidies for electric vehicles and for various other green energy projects. So it's not enough, but it's good. Uh, and honestly, it's the best that we can ask for at this point, especially given the fact that Democrats had 50-50 control of the Senate and barely got Joe Manchin on. Barely. In fact, Joe Manchin wrote the bill. So it was actually a compromise between Manchin and Schumer. But honestly, because it was done under Biden, I'm just giving Biden credit for it. So this year, I think, was actually a pretty good year. Let's put aside the fact that he won the midterms, which is something that hasn't been done by any president since Bush. Although, to be fair, Bush had literally a terrorist attack. So outside of literally the country being attacked, it hasn't been done since, okay, 98. But okay, outside of blowjobs and terrorist attacks, it hasn't been done since, I don't know, the 80s. I actually don't know outside of 98 and 2002 about when the party in power gained seats in the Senate. And well, I guess we also lost seats in the House. And I guess Trump did that in 2018. But anyway, but the point is that there was no red wave that was predicted, especially with the economy going on and etc. This is why I'm going to give him a high score, but I'm not going to put too much on that because to me it feels like the Republicans lost the midterms more than Democrats won it, in the sense that Republicans overreached in terms of being, number one, very stupid, just unbelievably dumb. In terms of election fraud, they said, the election was rigged. It obviously wasn't. And everyone knew it. So, the people who said it was, they just got laughed off stage, like Carrie Lake, like Don Bolduc, etc. Abortion, of course, was a huge one. And the fact that Republicans just tended to, elect wacky primary candidates. Just wacky people. The people that really you can't vote for. Like, okay, I'm just going to give 1 minute on this. Yeah, Donald Trump is an idiot, and people voted for him anyway. But I don't know. Like at this point, Carrie Lake was even more laughable, just so obviously laughable. In the same sense, like that 2020 Trump was laughable, but also laughable and dangerous. And I think Republicans were actually, for the first time in my life, first time probably since the Republican Party has gone crazy, actually punished for said craziness. Which is very, very good for everyone. So with that, I'm going to give Joe Biden an A minus for the year. And you may ask, why an A minus? The reason why is because, as I mentioned last time, presidential leadership is the most important. So because of that, it ranks a lot higher than all of these other ones. Now, I do kind of feel bad for not giving him an A. It just doesn't really make sense to me. So I am actually going to change this. I actually did this last time, by the way. I changed it from B minus to B or B plus to B. But I'm actually just going to put an A. I mean, there's no reason not to. He did very well this year in a way that's pretty shocking, given the fact that it's his second year in office, which is when most presidents lose steam. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you for watching. And remember that the change we need to see is always in progress. Thank you for watching. And like, comment, and subscribe.